So, Helen, have you seen the news today?
Do you know what? I haven't.
You haven't?
Actually. So tell me, what have you seen?
I've been generally avoiding the news, but looking at just the COVID-related stuff because I feel like it's a bit overwhelming. But today was interesting article. So I've got it up. I'm going to read the headline. So,
Yeah.
Almost all of 50 of the UK's biggest employers do not plan to bring staff back to the office full time.
Okay.
So they've done a survey. 43 of the firms said that they would embrace a mix of home and office working with staff at home for 2 or 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me think about us. It made me think about the last year that we've all had with COVID, how people have been thrown into working from home when they're not used to it, how we've all been thrown into virtual meetings. There's also a quote which I think you would be particularly interested in. So it's from Andrew Monk, who... Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Where's it gone? Sorry. I just had it. It was about... Oh, I've lost it. I'm on the live
That's okay.
news page. That's my problem. Anyway, there was a quote from someone who works for the NHS, and he said that from his point of view, the people who are pushing for people to get back in the office full time are managers who like to micromanage, and they like to look over people's shoulders. They like to make sure people are doing their job because they don't trust their staff to do their job, which I thought was a very interesting point of view. So I'm kind of bringing that in light of what we're going to talk about today, which is virtual meetings.
Yes.
And I think it's really interesting that we're at a position where we're looking forward past COVID to a world where people will be engaging in virtual meetings for the, for the future now.
Yes.
Not just as a necessity.
Yeah. Or Amy, I mean, can you remember, we're all going to be doing can you remember over the last 12 months and, everything that this global pandemic did to us? But we actually looked at each other and said, oh my goodness, our business is built on being in the room with people, doing our facilitation. What are we going to do? Will this be the end of our organisation? And we had some very fast decisions to make. And the truth is, I think, that not just us, but organisations globally had been, up until a year ago, had been meaning to get better at virtual meetings for the longest time. I think it was something that we all knew we ought to do, all knew that we needed to do, but there was a nervousness about how to do it well, plus an overwhelming desire to be in a physical space with people, of course. I mean, we are, as human beings, we are hardwired to get, this is going to sound a bit weird, but we are genetically wired to get our DNA into the next generation.
Yes.
That's what we're programmed to do.
You're speaking to a pregnant person. I know.
But, we can't do that through a screen. Well, not yet.
No.
So we are predisposed to want to be in each other's company. And of course, there are so many benefits of that. But this idea of working virtually was something that we'd been meaning to do for the longest time. And now, 12 months ago, we were absolutely forced to do or, not survive.
Yeah.
And what that made us do is look at how do we do this well? And over the year, and, if we think about what the article that you've read in today's news about the next 6, 12 months, 18 months, 5 years... But this period of not only have we had to pivot into working online, working virtually, but we've also done a lot of learning. So I think there's been a lot of articles, hasn't there? We've had articles from Microsoft, for example. They worked out that although the future is unknown in terms of how specifically we might be working, remote working is here to stay.
Yeah.
And the challenges that it brings includes things that we know, like increased focus on screen time, increased stress. You know, as humans, it's not as easy for us to pick up on non-verbal clues.
Yeah.
We never can work out whose next turn it is to speak.
That's why you get people doing this in Zoom
I
meetings.
hate that hands up. I mean, I'm sorry for Teams and others. I value you all dearly. But as a facilitator, I really hate that hands up feature because
It makes you feel like you're in school.
it makes you feel like you're in school, but also when you're trying to track a conversation, it's really hard to know who put their hand up first. And by the time you get around to the hands up, the moment's passed. But also other things that there is an innate human condition where we're able to read the room. You know, if we're in a physical space with each other, we sort of check out the chemistry and we check out the shape of each other's heads. You know, it's like, how are we feeling being in this physical space? And that's difficult in virtual terms. And also the idea of screen sharing. You know, we've gone with it for the past 12 months, but it's quite difficult when somebody shares a screen, even though there's really cool stuff on there quite often. The size of the screen share means that you can't really read it, and it strains your eyes even more. And so Microsoft have, and we'll put this into the show notes, it's a good article that calls out why it feels stressful.
Yeah.
And though we're learning and we are getting better at it, and there are lots of things that we can do to really nail this, I think.
Yeah. I think especially, you know, acknowledging how everyone's been having to live and work over the last year. You know, it's not okay that people have had to be working from home, be in meetings, and also have their kids at home from school, for example.
Yeah.
That is not, it's not feasible for people. So there's the stresses and the challenges of virtual meetings themselves, and then also what everyone's been having to deal with, you know, mentally, practically as well, which in theory, moving forward, virtual meetings won't be happening with people also having to homeschool children, being in lockdowns. And it's, I think, it being a choice for companies rather than it being forced on them, I think will be quite empowering that they're choosing to work in this way, choosing to make it work for them and work out the best way to do it, to give people a bit more of a work-life balance and all of those positives outside of the pandemic life, which we've kind of all come to associate with virtual meetings, the stress of the pandemic.
That is such a good point. That is such a good point. I hadn't actually... So when you think of anchoring, so one thought triggers another. So... you know, the sound of a particular piece of music triggers
a smell or something.
Or a smell or something creates a nice thought. And I hadn't actually considered the idea of associating online meetings with the stresses of dealing with a global pandemic and all of that. So I think there is a pattern interrupt to create here where, to your point, which is we choose to do these things online because actually... there are many efficiencies and cost benefits. Yeah.
You haven't got to fly people around the world.
Exactly.
Put them up in hotels. They haven't got to be away from their families for days at a time. There are loads of pros. And it's just kind of looking for those and then figuring out what we do about the cons.
Yes. One of this whole thing about working online and it made me smile because over the past few months people have called out, you know, don't call it virtual. You know, the truth is that online meetings are real. They're not virtual. They actually exist.
Yes.
So and people have called that out as a pet frustration over the past couple of months, which makes me smile. But online meetings, the advice and the tips that are going around are really helpful. For example, people would say, turn your videos on.
Yeah.
Don't just go on mute. And they are really good and practical elements of advice that we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
But I think that the advice that is sort of going around about how to do online meetings well, for me, is almost looking in the wrong place.
Okay.
Because I still facilitate meetings where a really well-intentioned team leader might welcome the team, the group, and say, thank you all for being here. And then typically will say, and I know it's not ideal, we've got to make the best of it. So even after 12 months plus of working online, there is still a mindset, I think a deeply ingrained mindset, that online meetings are second best.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we need to start. So my sense is that, with the advice and the tips about online meetings, which are all good, and we can go through the practical things about how to do them well. The thing I'd like to offer here is I think we're beginning in the wrong place. We've got the wrong start point, because if the mindset is they are second best, well, guess what? That mindset will drive behaviour. Behaviour will get a suboptimum outcome. We'll always feel as if we're in a second best environment, and that won't get the best out of all of us. So the very first thing for me is switch that mindset.
Yeah.
Because experience for us, I know we've both shared this in the past 12 months, is that some of those online meetings we're doing, or online meetings that our clients are doing without us now, are fantastic.
Yeah.
My goodness, the agility and the resourcefulness that it's bringing forward in people.
And brand new ways of working for teams. Like we've worked with teams where they would traditionally have had one annual meeting for a couple of days, and that's the only time they touch base. But where now, because it's online, they're able to spread that contact over several weeks or months and keep those points of contact.
Yeah.
And it's completely shifted how they work with each other as a team.
Yeah.
Which
Agreed.
you couldn't do if you, and they're global teams. You've got people in Asia and people in Europe and people in America. You couldn't do that. If it wasn't online, you couldn't do it that regularly, because getting everyone physically together is such a big headache. So,
and you know what that makes me remember is when our very first, and it was Ben actually that did this meeting, and I will forever remember what he did as the icon and the beacon of, this could be brilliant. And I'll tell this story for a time to come, I think. But he was asked, the pandemic hit us.
Yeah.
The online meeting was the only way to go. And we've got a global client that Ben works with regularly that said, oh my goodness, we were about to bring everybody together from Asia, from the US, from Europe. We can't bring people together, but we've got to have the meeting. And the client said to Ben, but the problem is to find a time zone that we can all do it in, so that, the guys in the US don't have to be awake at 3 a.m. People in Asia and Australia don't have to be, staying up, because people's welfare and well-being is just so important, and sleep is an important part of that. Yeah. How do we do it? And Ben did the most amazing thing, which was said, okay, let's take a different mindset, which is we can do this. We just need to find out how. And what he did with the client was he created a meeting where, if you think about global time, the guys and girls in Asia were waking up first. And so what they would do is work on a particular topic for this global team. They'd start the work, and then as time zone opened up across the rest of the world, the topic got passed a bit like a baton in a relay race across the time zone, so that people, as they were waking up and coming to work, were adding to it.
Yeah.
And there was a point at the middle of the day, if you like, in Europe, Central Europe, where it wasn't too late for Asia and it wasn't too early for the US, where everybody, it was a small window maybe of an hour, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
The whole team could come together, but then would continue the baton pass as Asia went to sleep. And it was genius. And I mean, I've got goosebumps now remembering that. And you talk about innovation and necessity driving innovation.
Mm-hmm.
That was the point at which, for our organisation, we thought we can do this. And ever since then, we have continued to work, not just us and other organisations as well, to think creatively and innovatively.
Yeah.
So this goes beyond the sage advice, and the advice is good about all put your cameras on and all have the audio, and
that's kind of like the tip of the iceberg, though, isn't it? There's so
it's
much
sort
more
of
to
like
it.
it's sort of like the we know that now.
Yeah.
We know not to have, where possible, don't have anybody in an online call for any longer than 3 hours. I mean, keep the meeting short. We get this stuff now. That's almost a given. It's the stuff on top of that, the creativity on top of that really brings the potential of online working to life. And that's what excites us.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
And the ability to make it personal to what that organisation needs for that meeting at that time.
Yes.
Using the tools we've got available to us flexibly. Because there are so many tools that we can use.
Yes.
Like Miro we use that in so many different ways for different clients, and it's just amazing to see how you can really make a personalised experience based on what the client needs.
Yes, I agree. I made a list. I just did a quick list before we got onto this call of all the stuff that's out there to use, and this is not. I mean, this is a tiny. Whether it's Zoom, Teams, Skype, Miro, Mural, Mentimeter, and more, and more, and more. The tools and the technology are, again, necessity drives invention. They're coming at us thick and fast.
There's going to be more, isn't there? There's going to be more innovation coming.
Yes. Now, here's another thing about an angle for us here is, and even though those tools are brilliant, I think people are looking in the wrong place when they're using them. So, for example, I spoke with a lady just last week who said to me that they are using Teams really well, which is good. And I think there's a function on Teams to be able to, add information. Obviously, there's a chat function, but I think there's a way of using Teams in an interactive way. But predominantly, what they're doing is using Teams, but showing PowerPoint. So the base of the meetings that they're doing, which they're enjoying and they think they're doing well, which is good, is a PowerPoint deck will be created by somebody. Yeah. Will be shown on Teams and people will share their screens. And then you can add and annotate and put comments in the chat and all of that. So there is a layer of interaction. Yeah. The problem for me is, to your point earlier, is because there are now more opportunities for people to meet, because we can do bite-sized sessions more frequently, is if, for example, in this instance, PowerPoint is used each time and the same process is used each time, then the fatigue that we all feel by looking into a screen is exacerbated, I think, because you also, on top of that, get process fatigue. Yeah. And the example that I would give in a non-meeting sense is, if you think about playing a keyboard, which I know you can do. You I think keyboard, or is it the guitar for you?
No, I used to play piano. I used to play a bit of guitar. And then I married a musician who's like stinkingly talented at everything, and it makes you feel a little bit inferior. So now I just sing while he plays.
Well, in that case, you know exactly
Yes.
what I'm talking about here, which is if you sat down at a keyboard or you stepped up to a microphone to sing and all you did on the keyboard was hit middle C,
Yeah.
or all you did when you were singing was la, 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 la,
Yeah.
it becomes very boring very quickly.
Yes.
And
It's like
for
what
me,
it's like what a toddler does when they're given a musical instrument.
exactly. And they are the fundamentals of learning to play. But if that's all you ever stick to, and the using PowerPoint and showing it through Teams or Zoom is all you ever do, fatigue of being on those calls will, so advice from us to all of our listeners is stop repeating the process. Learn to play a bit of jazz.
Yeah.
Mix it up. It
Improvise.
will take you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You will be forced to learn something new, but that's all right. We've been forced to learn stuff. We've survived. Don't get stuck in a groove now. Improvise. Yeah.
Helen, do you think this is do you think these habits have been formed because people have been forced into this way of working and they've just taken what they were doing in person in a meeting room and tried to translate it onto an online space, and potentially what they were doing in the meeting room was already habitual and samey and just, this is just what we do, and then they've just essentially picked it up and moved it onto their computers. Because again, and I think we've got empathy for everyone. We've all lived through this very stressful year, and it's not a criticism because, as you say, overnight people were like, go home, we're not in the office anymore, we're going to have it all online. So people have had to just go, okay, we've got to do what we do there but online. And now it kind of feels like a time to pause, reflect, and then go, okay, we can't just keep on, as you say, sharing PowerPoints. Do you think it's those those old, it's like the old habits die hard thing?
I think that is I think it's a really smart observation. And my answer is maybe. And I think that through any period of instability, as human beings, we look for the thing that we know, don't we? We look for the stability out of chaos.
Yeah.
And so in some ways you might be right, picking up what we were already doing and importing it into the online world. Feels safe, and it's the thing we know to do. But what your question brings for me is how I feel about using PowerPoint in in-person meetings or anywhere, because it harks into a world of where people would bring people into a in-person meeting space. And to your earlier point is sometimes they'll have travelled thousands of miles to get there.
They're jet lagged.
To be treated like an audience when they get into the... So why do that? Why present at people when actually you've got some assembled brains either in the in-person environment or in the online environment? Use the brains. And if sharing PowerPoint is helpful to set up a conversation, go for it.
Yeah.
But don't think that it's the only way. And please don't assemble people around a screen or in a meeting room to treat them as an audience. Get full participation.
Yeah.
And and expand that repertoire.
Yeah. Because, there are times where like a bit of a show and tell are necessary, to impart information, but it's when the whole meeting is show and tell. That's the problem. So would you have maybe a rough rule of thumb for people if there does need to be some information sharing, percentage wise? Are we talking 30% of the time spent on that or less? Like, is it as little time as possible spent talking at people? What would your kind of rough rule of thumb be?
Yes. Well, I'm going to say, you'll love this, Amy. I'm going to say it all depends. and it all depends on what it is that let's use it in a meeting sense. It all depends what that meeting needs to achieve. And then if you think about a meeting being broken down into topic areas, sometimes you might have a topic that needs to have a bit more tell than another topic that needs to have a little bit more collaborative thinking. So I'm not going to give a rule of thumb percentage. What I am going to say is be absolutely crystal clear about each individual topic on the agenda, what it needs to do. And if a topic is about informing, then keep the tell in the actual session as a minimum. And the way to do that is to send information ahead of time that people can read. And then all you do in the session itself is bring out the summary of that and then create space for people to explore the topic.
Yeah.
The other thing that the question brings for me is the way different preferences, right? So some people really will benefit from going to a meeting where there is a lot of information shared, a lot of tell. And then they like to go away and reflect, and because that's their natural style.
Yeah.
Where others would like to come and have tell reduced.
Yeah.
Because they are much better at engaging in conversation and sharing information that way. So not only be careful about what you want for each topic, but really be cognizant of the assembled brains, the assembled people, and what their preferred engagement style is.
Yeah.
You're more likely to get a good outcome from each topic and therefore from the meeting if you've thought about the people themselves.
Yeah.
And how best to get the best out of them.
Yeah. I mean, could it be as simple as, we've got, for example, I'm going to share this information for 10 minutes, but just mentally saying to yourself at 3 different points, I'm going to stop and ask a question, for example.
Nice. Yeah. So the idea would be, rather than go at it as a marathon, do a series of short sprints, give a bit, pause, ask.
Yeah.
What do you need to tell or ask at this stage? And make those stage gates about getting clarity.
Yeah.
So do a series of short sprints, get clarity at the end of each sprint, which, by the way, if you're the information sharer, it gives you a chance to get a drink of water or to take a breath. And then at the end of those short sprints, then invite the conversation. I think that's a nice way to think about it. And that works, we're talking about online meetings here, but clearly that works in-person meetings, so to speak.
Yeah.
The other thing that your question brings for me about habits, so when you said, is it because we've just ported in from the the face-to-face meeting space into, I actually think that people's comfort and confidence around using technology plays a massive part. So there are some people I know who don't want to turn their screen on or their video on because they feel very self-conscious being seen on a screen.
And in their home environment, it can feel a bit invasive, can't it?
It can. And we know that we can turn on different backgrounds and so on, but people get a bit stage fright.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. And so it takes time for people to trust that it's okay to turn on the video and just to be who I am. And maybe because I'm in my home environment, I'm not suited and booted like I might be in the office. And that's all right. We're all in it together. But just bear in mind that just because some people are happy to be seen through a camera, it's not the same for all.
Yeah.
Same with audio. And then having comfort with technology. So people might feel that their edge of their capability is to show a PowerPoint and do a screen share because it feels a bit scary doing something else.
Yeah.
And so we need to appreciate the human condition for learning and make things as accessible for as many as we possibly can, I think.
I think that that confidence with tech is something that I've seen as a visualizer with TFP, that is a lot of the benefit that we bring when you've got someone whose sole role is to do the tech. So for example, when we're working on the Miro boards, you can kind of see an evolution of people's confidence where the first meeting that I'm in with a team, no one adds anything to the board because they're all a bit like, oh, it's a bit new, don't know what to do. And then the visualizer's adding all the information. And then by the time you've worked with that group for 3 or 4 times, they're all whizzing around. But it is that learning process, and sometimes it is, and obviously not every meeting will have a facilitator and a visualizer in, but knowing that some people will have skills that other people don't, and it's okay to utilize them, and maybe just nominate someone to be the one kind of manning the tech, if you like, so that other people can learn and feel confident, and they're not put under that pressure straight away.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because I'm working with a team where the leader of that team right now is feeling really exposed because he naturally is quite a late adopter when it comes to technology.
Okay.
And he's feeling that the team that he's working with are galloping away and are getting confident, and it's creating a gap, and in his perception, quite a big gap.
Okay.
Between his team and him about how he engages with technology. And I think he's got by so far. But as he said to me the other day, I've got to get good at this because this is the way of the world going forward, and I don't want to be left behind. And so he recognises that. But for many leaders in that situation, there's a consideration about face.
Yes.
And about I don't want to lose face.
Yeah.
And therefore I need to be vulnerable, and I need to allow myself to learn, and I need to make mistakes in front of people, and it's got to be all right.
Yeah. It is a huge thing, I think, especially technology over my lifetime, right? So I'm in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
So if someone like yourself who's been in a career for 20 years, the technology within your working life doing the same job has drastically changed. When I was a child, we still had that dial-up internet, and all you could do was like play solitaire on a computer, and that's it. And now we're gathering people from all around the world using all these interactive tools, and it is terrifying for some people. And I think that if we are confident using it, you can kind of not be very empathetic to that, but it's really important to remain humble and, see the person that actually this can be really scary for them. Everything they've ever done in their working life now is just like, it's like the rug's been pulled out from underneath them. And
exactly. Amy, you'd laugh. I remember when a new technology came in called a mobile phone.
Yeah.
And I hoped that this newfangled fad would go away as quickly as it...
Did you really?
Oh, yes. Because at the time they were massive things.
Yes.
They were like
a briefcase.
It's like a briefcase up to your ear, and the battery pack was even bigger. And
yeah.
So there was the clunkiness of it. But I was thinking, that, if I look the other way, people will get over this phase and it'll just go away really quickly. And now I can't live without my mobile phone. So
none of us can.
Exactly. I remember that feeling, and I think that is still real for many people when it comes to working with tech.
Yeah.
A wise old facilitator by the name of John O'Keefe that I admire very much for out beyond the box thinking on that point that you've just made about the rug being pulled, said to me, Helen, if you ever feel like the rug gets pulled from under your feet, well, you'd better learn to dance on a moving carpet, because being able to keep upright when the ground beneath you is moving in that way, that's the only way that you're not just only going to survive, but really thrive.
Yeah.
And I think that point's valid, absolutely valid for now.
Yeah. And that's what every business that's still standing through this pandemic has been forced to do that. But it's
absolutely,
everyone's tired. Everyone is kind of shell-shocked, and we're still kind of reeling from it. So
yes,
going back to the first point you made, consciously moving forward with positivity from here is really necessary, because it's been, for lots of people, stressful, traumatic, negative year of work.
Yes.
And then looking forward, we need to be starting from a place of positivity.
And that for me, I'm feeling, so my next layer of learning, and for us as a business, is about this next 6 months.
Yeah.
And the reason it's causing me cause for a bit of concern is that we're going to move into a hybrid situation where we've got some people who are in a meeting room and a chunk of people who are dialing in. Now, that was happening before the pandemic, and the technology, you can beam people in. But the reason that I'm just drawing breath about it, and I haven't quite worked out yet how we'll do this well, is that the people in the room have got all of those cues of body language, read the room and so on, where people dialing in. So the hybrid is where we're going next. And that, I think, should be the subject of another podcast when we've figured out how to do it really well, because that's our next challenge.
And that will be a big challenge.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So what would be your key message, your key takeaway for people listening to this who I have no doubt are participating in virtual meetings and have been for a while now?
Yeah, I'm really clear. My key message is adjust your mindset. If you are somebody who is thinking that working online is second best, if your mindset is that, your behaviour and your results will come from that. We can unlock a massive potential online. We do. We are demonstrating it. So shift the mindset. And then the second point is stop playing middle C when it comes to the process tools that you're using online. Improvise a bit, play a bit of jazz, stretch yourself about what might be possible. Think creatively, a bit like Ben did all of those months ago. And you'll be amazed at what you can make happen. If you'd like to contact us, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at TFP_meetings. Or you can head over to our website, thefacilitationpartnership.com.